Hey, welcome to Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, we have a special guest. We have our special guest, Mary Beth Schrudder, and she is going to teach us a lot of things about spiritual growth. She is a spiritual life coach, and she has an amazing website that you need to check out. It's day1lifecoaching.com. That's her business, Day One Life Coaching LLC. We're going to learn everything about her professional story and her background. But before we do that, it's morning time. I want to say good morning to you. How you doing today?
Good morning. I'm so happy to be here. This is going to be fun.
Well, I appreciate your time. So today's topic, we're going to explore a lot of fun things that I think people appreciate. So when it comes to people who have relationship, experience from maybe some toxic things that have been happening, spiritual healing is something that can be very crucial for people to, move on with their lives. So before we dive into our topics today, kind of give us a little background of your professional life, how you got into business.
Yeah. So my background's actually in the corporate world. And I've actually been a life coach for 7 years now. And I got into it just because of all the healing and the shadow work that I did on myself and recovered from a lot of my own personal addiction. So my story is all about I speak very powerfully about addiction because it's personal with me. And, once I got out on the other side of it, my big ones were alcohol was probably the biggest, definitely the biggest, some food addiction issues, some like eating disorder type things. And then also relationships, and a lot of this it's just born in childhood, like a lot of addictions. And what are we doing? We're just trying to self-soothe. If you have some sort of addiction, we're seeking relief. Like we innately know we're supposed to feel good and we don't feel good. And we either want to numb out or fill a void, escape our reality. And even video games, like I used to say, kids with video games, but it's so many adults are like escaping their reality through video games, through pornography, through toxic relationships. And we numb ourselves out with food and alcohol and weed and things like that are sometimes we're not able to moderate it. And that was the case with me. I overdid everything. I'm an extremist kind of, and so it turns out that's something you can ask yourself. Are you good at moderating? Are you able to like turn it up and down like a knob? Because I wasn't. Like I didn't have a stop button, right? So I would keep going like, oh, one more drink, or, and I didn't just want one cookie, I have that addictive brain. So I wanted the whole freaking sleeve of cookies. You know what I'm saying?
Like
So, and
just one
yeah,
more.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, some people can moderate and that's cool. That's cool. But I wasn't one of those people. And that's self-awareness, right? We have to come to that realization. Like, are we able to, you know, control, or it's that self-control, or are we better as abstainers? And for me, I'm definitely better at abstaining, and actually I'm really good at it. And my life has been amazing ever since I let go of my last addiction, which was alcohol. And that one was with me since a young teen, actually. So I'm about to lie. I'm 50. But I quit drinking when I was right before I turned 45 years old. And so it's been over 5 years, and it was the hardest one to quit because I was in denial. Shemaya, everybody drinks. Everybody drinks. And it's like hard to tell that you have an issue when everybody's drinking as much or more than you. But it was totally bringing me down. I teach law of attraction. I'm passionate about it. It was bringing down my vibe. Alcohol is a lower vibrational substance, and it was just no longer a match for what I was doing. I was already a life coach for 2 years when I added on an addiction recovery niche, right? I'm like, I'm going to help other people, who have addictions, like not even addressing and realizing that I had it. And I started to really learn about it and be like, oh my gosh, like literally everybody has addictions. And like we said earlier about video games, porn, we've got some people, they're addicted to work. And you could say, oh, well, that's no big deal. It's not like drugs or alcohol. It destroys families. It really, really does. I get a lot of clients who have work addiction and then it led to divorce. They hire me because they're like trying to not recreate that pattern, right? That's how we get out of things, right? We got to interrupt these old patterns and have that self-awareness, which is very spiritual. Um, so yeah, there's all kinds of addictions and relationships that you brought up earlier. Like that was a huge one for me because it starts with in childhood. For me, my parents got divorced when I was 5. No big deal. Divorce is common, right? This was in the 70s. And life was different in the 70s. I know your audience is younger, but like we didn't have therapy, we didn't have any, like, it was just nobody talked about it. It was just like suddenly my dad was gone. And then I start panicking as a 5-year-old, like, I didn't know parents could leave. If my dad can leave, my mom can leave too. So that caused this anxiety. And I think, just that's where the self-soothing kind of strategy, the tactics, the techniques that we start to use started. That's where it's with that abandonment wound. And I didn't feel good. I was anxious. So then I had my first drink. This is crazy. At 11 years old. But I was on vacation with a girlfriend of mine, and her parents kind of were lenient and had like all kinds of alcohol sitting on the counter of the condo. And we were just like, I was a brat. I admit it. I was a brat, was a bad kid. And we just were like, let's get into it. Made some concoctions. But I can tell you, Shamaya, what I felt was relief for the first time in my life, because I just always had this anxiety. And like, I never had that safe feeling. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the answer to all of my problems right here. And that's a red flag. And I did a lot of stupid stuff over the, now I didn't become a regular drinker. I'll add that, until I was 14. I couldn't get my hands on it at 11. Right. But when I was 14, I had a boyfriend who was a couple years older than me, and he hooked me up. We got into weed. I mean, I did acid. We did, ecstasy. This was like everybody, like in my mind, everybody was doing this. Like I didn't really know any straight people, that we called them. And I had some bad influences around me. So the one that really stuck though into adulthood was the alcohol. And then that led to making bad decisions with relationships, to bring that back. Because when you're drinking and you're dating, you don't have great judgment. You've got clouded judgment. Okay. And people seem fun and they might seem like a match even when they're not, because like I was a fun drinker, so that's also what made it hard to tell I had an issue, because I wasn't like really doing anything so horrible. Like I was having fun and everybody liked hanging out with me. I wasn't pissing everybody off all the time. It happened now and then, of course, but for the most part, people were like, invite Mary Beth. She's a blast. And I was probably the bad influence on everybody, the one keeping everyone out too late. Right. But yeah, so when we date, we really don't want that clouded judgment. And like what I tell my clients now, because most people are having a struggle in this modern dating world where everyone's swiping and you're just like, it's like looking through a catalog. Right. And by the way, dating apps in and of themselves can turn into a huge addiction, just like scrolling on your phone on Instagram or whatever social media app. Addiction, there's a scrolling addiction that's huge, and people waste hours of their day. And so it is a big deal. You got to catch yourself in that. Even I will catch myself, because I have to use my phone for work. Right. And I got to put my phone in a different room. I just have to. But when you're dating these days and you're drinking on the first date, you're not asking the right questions. We really need to vet these people, so you're not wasting their time or your time either. Right. So we got to ask questions. Like I have an acronym for love, which is L is for lifestyle. On our first date, we don't want to wait. We want to ask questions about these important things about lifestyle, because these things do matter later down the road. It doesn't matter if you're in a chemical haze and you're like super attracted to somebody. That's not enough to keep things going. The O in love stands for open heart. So we want to ask questions to make sure that person is open to the same thing you're open to. Are they emotionally available? Are they looking for something casual or something? And that's fine if they are, as long as you are too. But if you want long-term and they're looking for cash, that's not a good match. So you got to ask questions. V is for values. We got to ask about somebody's values. That's the biggest one. If they have different values than you, that is going to show up big time later down the road. You want to make sure you're on the same page with values. And then E is for expectations, right? So expectations, and that could be like your audience is younger. Like, hey, do you want kids? Like, if you want, if you don't want kids, and I do, that's a problem. Expectations can even be like, where do you want to live later down the road? Like, because you don't want to marry someone if they have a completely different idea. Like, oh, I'm going to retire on the beach. Really, I want to retire in the mountains or in the countries. Like, I don't want to be at the beach. So I hate hot weather or I hate cold weather. These are like really important conversations to have up front, because later down the road, it's gonna inevitably be a problem. And when we're drinking alcohol, we're not doing that. We're just shooting the shit with people, right? Like just like, hey, you look good, I look good, and people are jumping into bed within the first 3 dates. Like with my clients, when I tell them just at least the first 3 dates, I'm not trying to tell anyone they have to quit drinking for permanently, but maybe the first 3 dates, build that foundation and try to do 3 dates sober. And I know it's fun. I know it's a social lubricant, and I know it's hard to date without it. But if you're having problems and you keep attracting the wrong people, this could be a big reason why. Are you jumping into bed with someone in 3 dates? I hate to break it to you, but you're having sex with strangers. And then you're wondering, why didn't that work out? Well, you didn't know the person, sweetie. And that is why it didn't work out, because you're not building that foundation. You just have a foundation of at least friendship, before you jump into bed with somebody. And it's interesting that that's even looked at as a problem or something weird to do, to get to know somebody first. I mean, we've got people out there, having sex. Like, honestly, I have a lot of male clients who have told me that they don't feel the need for like prostitution or anything is even there anymore, because they can get on a dating site and a lot of people are having sex on their first dates. They're getting, and I think if you remove that alcohol component, I think a lot less is going to happen, because you're going to be a sober mind. You're not going to be it's not going to be so easy to jump into bed with somebody. So that's the first place that I would say to fix things, so you don't end up with the wrong person, or in long term, like you're drinking for the first 3 months of a relationship every time you're together, and then when you don't drink and you're like, wait a minute, I don't even like this person when I'm sober. It's like two different things, right? Because we can tolerate a lot of stuff because alcohol dumps down our brain, and we can think things are fun that aren't really fun to us when we're sober. So that's why it's huge. That changes people's lives. And the other thing with toxic relationships, that starts in childhood too. Like, my dad was emotionally absent, physically absent. So like for me, like until I went through my shadow work, and shadow work for anyone listening is really going over those old subconscious patterns, like bringing them to your conscious mind. It's all about accepting those rejected parts of ourselves that we're trying to shove down, maybe through addiction and things like that. And that was certainly the case with me. So like, what are we attracted to later in life? Well, we are attracted to a lot of those things from our childhood. It's familiar. It feels good. And we also go into dating with this mindset of, I'm going to get it right this time. This is familiar, this emotional absence, but I can change it. I can change it. We're going to get it right. I can fix this. And that's not necessarily, rarely ever the case. We really just want to find, because that's kind of like your bite matches my wound situation. You don't want someone who is just that repeating pattern. We want to interrupt these patterns. And so when we're sober, we definitely are going to be much better at recognizing red flags and staying away from them, staying out of it, because I was certainly attracted to toxic people because that's what I was used to. A lot of people, a lot of your listeners, this is like huge with my clientele. People get addicted to drama in relationships. Okay. That has the same effect on the brain that drugs and alcohol do. You get the dopamine hits, right? You get all of these ups and downs, and the toxic relationship can be very addictive. And then something crazy happens when you actually meet someone normal and healthy, you're not attracted because they're boring, because they don't bring that drama and conflict that you're used to. So it's a problem. It's something that you don't want to be addicted to, because it is, oh yeah, you got the sparks, right? You got the chemistry, you got this passion, and it feels good. But you got the crazy up and down, but you also got the instability and the abuse, a lot of times verbal, mental, spiritual abuse, right? And so these things come along with it. And even though you've got the sparks and the chemistry, you can build that in a healthy relationship too. Like it's happened to me where I was used to the toxic stuff and then I was bored with a healthy guy. I'll admit it. And I wasn't that attracted. But guess what? I gave it time. These relationships where somebody feels more like a friend in the beginning actually can turn out to be the best. And it can change to where you do fall in love and then the tables are turned and you do have the chemistry. So I want to say, if you have a history of toxic relationships, then you probably, when you feel that spark, when you feel that's familiar, ooh, that's going to be someone you want to probably run from. That's going to be a red flag if your history is toxic. Okay. If you have a history of healthy relationships and you feel sparks, that's different. That's just you feeling sparks because you're attracted to that person. But if your history is toxic, dramatic relationships and you feel sparks right away, we feel that energetically. You know, I'm a law of attraction teacher. We feel that. And it's subconscious levels that we might not even recognize at first, but it is there. And when I feel, so like for me, when I feel that immediate, oof, like, this, passion, that's a bad sign for me. And I step back. I don't run. I'll ask a lot of questions and make sure, but 10 out of 10 times it's been okay, thank God that I didn't jump into anything with this person because they were showing these toxic patterns of behavior. And I know what questions to ask to vet people, things like that. So I avoid that now. But back in my past, I would have jumped right in, right? So it's really about asking the right questions, keeping a sober mind, because we don't want that unpredictable behavior, not someone that we're going to be serious long-term with. I mean, if you have a friends with benefits situation and that's what you want, that's different, but just understand if you really are attracted to someone that way, and you might end up falling for that person. And then that can become toxic, even though in the beginning you're like, oh no, I'm not going to, he's just a friend with benefits or she's just a friend with benefits. But one or the other, if you're both attractive people, it could happen and someone's going to get hurt. So did I answer your question?
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
more?
Yeah, you definitely answered that. And but
Yeah.
day1lifecoaching.com. She's the founder CEO of Day One Life Coaching LLC. When you talk about breaking patterns, I think that's key and that's very important to talk about because say you are someone who is toxic, but maybe you're toxic because previous experiences. So
Mm-hmm.
it's probably one way of you just protecting yourself.
Yeah.
How do you kind of have a good habit to say, oh, here comes that same old pattern. Let me try to adjust my ways so I don't keep going down the spiral, same path.
Yeah. Some people need therapy, some people, because it's really the hardest thing for us to see is ourselves. Some people need a coach. Some people need someone who's already been through it. So like a mentor and like, if you can't afford a coach or anything like that, get on podcasts. There's a lot of free podcasts like yours that teach this thing. And there's a lot of people who give a lot of information out. I will tell you, it's harder to piece things together that way. And you want the thing that I offer that is the most helpful is one-on-one coaching. I do offer group coaching, but I can tell you, it's really like you want someone who's able to catch you because at first it's the hardest thing for us to see is ourselves. It's hard. We could see other people more than ourselves. That's true for all of us. So it is good to have someone one-on-one. Like I can catch my clients very easily. I'm an intuitive coach, so I can read people really well and catch things that they can't see. They're like, oh my gosh, and it's like getting a coach is like taking a quantum leap instead of just little baby steps to your goals, right? And healing, because a lot of it's like, that's what I became, what I needed. That's what I did in life is I became exactly what I needed, that I didn't have. And I pieced it all together and spent way too many years, doing this work that now I can easily teach. Right. But it's only because I've been through it all. And so it really is, it's not the easiest thing, especially doing shadow work, because it is kind of looking at all the parts, like I called it earlier, these parts that we've rejected and shoved down. But even though I teach law of attraction, Shamaya, I am not a positive vibes only person. opposite. Like those feelings are there for a reason. They're there for our guidance. We need to feel our feelings, and they're telling us what next step to take. So don't shove them down. Like that's what I did for years, shove down those feelings. Those emotions are indicators. And when you shove down feelings, they still live in your body, and it causes sickness. It causes disease. There's a huge mind body connection that even traditional doctors are recognizing now. Like think about stress, and when people say, oh, mind body connection, whatever, that's not true. I mean, just think about sexually. Just think about if a man thinks about a woman and, he's aroused, or, a woman thinks about a man and she gets aroused. That's a mind body connection. It's silly to say there's no connection. So if you're just think about if you're pushing down these emotions and feelings and trying to numb out with weed or alcohol or whatever your video games, whatever your thing is, those feelings are still there, and you're not really doing yourself any favors, because that is what leads to dis-ease really in the body. And so we really don't want it. This isn't something we want to put off a very long time, because I think there's a lot of cancer, there's a lot of autoimmune, there's a lot of stuff. And a lot of this is because our world's toxic, and we're all, our thoughts are toxic. And that's kind of what I feel like I do, is I help people detox their lives in all areas, physically, mentally, spiritually, all the things. And it's just so important these days. But yeah, we can't change anything that we don't acknowledge. Okay. So we can't change any of these patterns unless we just can see it. So sometimes people are very self-aware and self-reflective, and sometimes we need help, and it's okay to ask for help, and there's a lot of books, there's podcasts, like I said, follow people on social media that have been through things that you need to go through. If you don't think coaching's right for you, there's a lot of free resources out there.
We discussed earlier about the scroll effect, how that can be addictive as well. But also when people deal with stress, sometimes they can eat the problems away, or they have a lifestyle where they just have unhealthy eating habits as well, where it can be a lot more junk food than normal.
Mm-hmm.
What's some of the things you've been able to see, not maybe just with clients, but maybe personally, that
Yeah.
you have to catch and say, whoa, like that's like 3 bags of cookies. I need to slow down.
Yeah, there's a pause, right? Like you just kind of said, like when we get the idea to have the cookie or the donut or whatever it might be, and we got to pause. And like with me, I've been diagnosed with OCD, ADHD, anxiety and depression, all of these things. You can tell my brain works really fast. I'm very compulsive, impulsive person. But I'm not on any medication. So I'm not telling anyone to get off their medication, by the way, but I'm saying a lot of these so-called diagnoses are because no one ever taught us how to manage our emotions. No one ever taught us how to really be in the present moment. And a lot of the stuffing down our feelings is like because we haven't dealt with the stuff. And so because I went through that healing process that I teach, the spiritual recovery, it had to be spiritual for me. Regular programs didn't work. I needed that spiritual element. And that's why I teach it, is because that's what worked for me. Law of attraction, all of these techniques are how I help other people. But yeah, it's like when you get that thought, that doesn't mean you just need to be impulsive with it. It's taking that break and counting to 10, whatever works for you, whatever you need to do, thinking about, like, you might feel really good in the moment, but how am I going to feel after, like, because I have these goals, we got to make our goals our priority. And a lot of people try to rely on motivation. And I'm going to tell you what, you cannot rely on motivation. Motivation is crap. Like it's up and down. It's up and down. Like I do videos like this all the time, like on social media. Like I'll be like, okay, like I'm at the gym. I did not 0% did I want to be here. 0%. It's like cold and dark. This is just when I did the other night. It's like 5:30 and it's already dark and cold here where I am in Cincinnati, and I did not want to go. It's, but I went. We got to rely on commitment and discipline. We got to keep remembering our goals. Okay. Because motivation's crap. Even Olympic athletes aren't motivated to do stuff every day, but they rely on discipline and commitment. And like, even when you're hiring a coach, you have to at least be committed that you want to make these changes, because if you're just like motivated that day and you're like, oh, it's going to be fun to hire a coach, that's not going to be a good client for me, because I can't be with you 24/7 to keep you that way. Right. So yeah, it's commitment, it's discipline, it's wanting your goals more than you want that temporary, very temporary satisfaction of the donut and the alcohol, because that's like what happened with me with alcohol. Like I started to realize like, man, number one, it was just a habit, like a habit that went awry. That's what addiction is. It's a habit that goes awry. And don't make it like this huge thing that is like taking over your life. The bigger you make it, like, oh my gosh, this monster in my life, the harder it's going to be to heal. Like really, our mind is so powerful. We are powerful creators. We have so much more control over our lives than we give ourselves credit for. And that's like all that law of attraction stuff. Like everything's energy, you guys. This isn't a religion. This is science. This is science. Everything vibrates. We are vibrational beings. We are electromagnetic beings. We're always attracting, and you can't turn it off just because you don't believe in it. That's like saying, well, I don't believe in the universal law of gravity. I'm just going to not apply that today. Like it doesn't matter if you believe in it. It's happening. And that's the same way with the law of attraction. It's a universal law, like attracts like. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there, which is why I love to teach it. I love to teach it because we're always attracting and we're just doing it by default. So it's best to get on board, believe in it, and start deliberately creating your life. Start putting intention out there. And it's not just going to flow to you just because you're thinking positive thoughts. It's intention. It's attraction by action. Like there is no law of attraction without taking action. You can't just sit around on a freaking meditation cushion and think positive thoughts and think things are going to flow to you. That's not how it works. There's always action involved. Like anything that we create, anything you look around, that was once just an idea in somebody's head, right? It didn't get here by not taking action. And, there's still going to be like a lot of people think, oh, I can high vibe my way out of bad things happening. I hate to break it to you, but this is life. Life is supposed to be contrast. We're supposed to have, there is duality here. There is polarity. And that's how we learn. We learn through that stuff. It's designed that way. This 3D reality we're in is designed to have contrast. Now, what does change when you high vibe is your relationship to that contrast, your relationship to what happens like when something negative that you don't desire, that you don't prefer shows up in your life. How are you going to react? That's what changes when you high vibe. But we can't control other people's vibrations. We can only control our own. So inevitably, people are going to die in our life who we love. Pets are going to die. We're going to lose jobs. Stuff happens. But sometimes those things, you've probably heard the saying, that sometimes those things are happening for you, not to you. Like usually they are, like that's how we grow. Like I've never grown in my life when everything's like perfectly going smoothly. I always grow during those rough times, and I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't take back anything that I've learned because I wouldn't want that trade-off of not having that wisdom and that discernment that I have now when it comes to relationships and what I'm putting in my mouth and the substances I'm putting in my body. Like I wouldn't trade it for anything. So
once again, you're watching Refocused Network and listen to our guests on podcasts. Our guest, Mary Beth Schrudder, go to her website is day1lifecoaching.com. She's the owner, founder of Day One Life Coaching LLC. I know we have to wrap it up, but real quick, one thing I want to address too is when people are getting better in life, when people are actually putting in the reps, when they're actually being commitment, when they're actually being consistent, sometimes they deal with the growing pains of other people being jealous and other people saying things that is like, where'd that come from? You get people that just, they nitpick, and a lot of times it's because you're doing things that they wish they could. How have you been able to do that? Just growing your business and also understanding your clients and how they are making that growth, understanding that there's going to be seasons where people are going to actually trying to just distract you as well and have to stay in line with what you're doing.
So to be honest with you, I've lost friends for sure. And that's part of that process. But then I tell people, were they really friends or were they party friends? Because, and it is sad because like, let's have compassion for these people because they feel like they're losing that version of you that they loved. And they don't want it. Like they might not have the same goals. Like I have friends who still drink that stayed my friends and they're fine with it. And they're like, oh, you're still fun. We still like go out and stuff. And then I have friends who, what I am to them is like a mirror of something they couldn't do themselves. Right. So I'm a bad reminder and we just vibrated away from each other. And I think it's okay. And I think that's something a lot of people need to hear is it's okay when people vibrate out of your life. And that's literally what I call it. That's what we're doing. It's not mean. It just means we're no longer a vibrational match with that person. And some people are just meant to be with us for a season. We've all heard that, right? And some it's a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And not everybody's meant to be with you for a lifetime. Like that'd be really hard to manage anyway if everybody you met stuck in there. So I've lost my best friend. But she's a drinker, and it was not good for her. It was a bad reminder. We'll put it that way. And I'm okay with that because we were friends for decades. And but it is what it is. Maybe she'll come back, maybe she won't, but I've made new friends. We always replace things. And by the way, same thing with these bad habits. Always you want to replace those unhealthy habits with a healthier habit. Like when I quit drinking, for instance, AA wasn't for me. I teach spiritual recovery. I'm not down with going in and saying I am an alcoholic. I am an alcoholic, because I am is the most powerful thing you could say. You can't finish it with something negative. And also you stay in that old vibration. You stay stuck in that old identity. And for me, I changed my identity. I changed my vibration. I had an energetic shift. I'm not white knuckling it like a lot of people in AA are doing. They're like really tempted still to drink, but like I had a complete shift in energy, right? So that AA is great for people who love it. If it's helping, keep that tool in your toolbox, right? Keep that. But for me, it wasn't a good thing. I know too much about law of attraction and things like that to be that person. So it's just really about finding what works for you. I started going to the gym and I became a gym rat. Okay. That's what, instead of going to happy hour. So you got to find stuff like that that's going to work for you and replace those bad habits with good ones.
You've been watching and listening to Refocused Network. I'm Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Mary Beth Schrudder. Go to her website, day1lifecoaching.com. She's the owner, founder of Day One Life Coaching LLC. Time has gone past, but we'll definitely probably have to have you on again in the future, because I think this was a really great, healthy conversation. Last thing, I promise, as we wind down 2024 real quick, a lot of people think about the whole new year, new me phase, and it usually lasts about 30 days, and then they're back on the old ways. For you, as someone who helps people in your business to get to that point in their lives where they make that turning point, that change, and make a pivot, what would you say to our listening audience and our viewers? What's one thing that they can keep in mind, that they can be consistent if they're really serious about wanting to better themselves in 2025 and beyond?
Well, keep going back to your why. Why did you begin that journey to start with? Like, why did you even begin? Like, why did you have that goal? There's a reason you started the journey. So keep reminding yourself of that. And also take a look around, like you said earlier, it's like, who are you surrounding yourself with? We become like the people who are in our inner circle, right? We become just like them. So you want to surround yourself with people who are the way you want to be, not who are going to keep holding you back. So we might need to take a look at that, because I promise you, if you start surrounding yourself with these people who already are like where your goals are, you're gonna automatically, they're gonna rub off on you. You're gonna want to improve. They're gonna be a great influence. And most of us are kind of still trying to reach these goals while hanging around the bad influences. And there's just sometimes you just got to vibrate away.
I like that. I'm gonna steal that. That's good. I like that, vibrate away. I'm gonna start using that. But once again, we do have to cut it there. But we've been talking to Mary Beth Schrudder. Go to her website, is day1lifecoaching.com. Like always, I want to say thank you for your time.
Thank you.